From modern, fantasy, romance, action, and music manhwas, there might just be something in this week's video for you. Manhwa titles are timestamped in the video for your convenience. Our first manhwa for today is I Became a Fake Family with My Boss, a modern romance manhwa that I've currently read up to chapter 52 on. Its main character is Jung Yoo-na, a white-collar office worker who leads quite the busy life. Due to her sister and brother-in-law passing away due to an accident, Yoona became the primary caretaker of their only daughter, Jian. Having to juggle both a career and being a single mom in all intents and purposes, it's honestly quite difficult. To make matters even worse, she gets entangled with the new CEO of her company, Kang Lee-den. Well, of course, this is a romance drama, so you can already see where this is going, right? Like any good K-drama sense in a way, a fake marriage is about to ensue. To try and benefit both parties properly, Eden and Yoona start this contractual relationship with the eventual goal to separate as needed. Unsurprisingly, we all doubt that this will actually happen. The story is 8 out of 10. Considering Jung Yoona's situation, this is a very K-drama-esque introduction of a common girl gets into a relationship with a big conglomerate CEO. The pace and nature of the story is just right, and the tropes are there as you can expect. Overall though, there are a multitude of scenarios for our couple to get closer with each other considering their boss and employee. The characters are also 8 out of 10. For any fans of romance, I do think you would at least find these two leads somewhat plausible or relatable. Their attitudes and outlooks are understandable and give some more credence to the sometimes awkward situations and actions that they put for themselves. The added benefit of Jian being so cute is the cherry on top that tilts the score a little bit higher. The art is 7 out of 10. Run-of-the-mill, expected, and normal are the easiest ways to describe the art of this manhwa. With the usual detailed characters, over-exaggerated falls and awkward situations that allow Eden and Yoona to become closer, you should really know what to expect for modern romance manhwas at this point. So if you're a fan of modern romance manhwas with contractual marriages, similar to the perfect contract from my previous videos, but with a child in the picture, then give I Became a Fake Family with My Boss a read-through. This next manhwa to take a look at is Debut with You, a modern music manhwa that I've kind of read up to chapter 50 on. The protagonist of this story is Yoon Hye-sung, a middle-aged woman who is quite the fan of Na Yeon-woo, an individual who went through an idol survival show reminiscent to Produce 101 if you know of that one. Failing to meet her debut though, Yeonwoo was more or less just drifting along, and Hye-sung was still standing her and feeling regretful for Yeonwoo's situation as a whole as she wished the world would favor Yeonwoo. Almost as if by fate though, a system window greets Hye-sung asking if she wanted Yeonwoo to debut, to which of course without any sort of caution, she said yes. The catch? She herself has to participate in the exact survival show that Yeonwoo participated way back when. The story is 7 out of 10. Alternative reality is the easiest way for me to describe this plot. Hye-sung is still herself, but somehow reality has shifted to adjust for her participation in the survival show alongside her bias. With a touch of mystery here and there, it overall plays like how you would expect an idol survival show would be, of course with Hye-sung having a system with her. The characters are 8 out of 10. Since it's a survival show, there are quite the number of characters, but for the most part, it's able to identify only the ones that are notable for Hye-sung's overall goal. With each character though, they have their own agenda, feelings, and skill set that will either elevate or eliminate them from the final group. The art is 8.5 out of 10. Fans of K-pop groups and manhwa might find this particular spin on things a little bit interesting. Nothing is necessarily a surprise, but it's just an overall fun, pleasant vibe. Most of the time you feel like you should be listening to music alongside it, although I'm not sure if there are any tracks actually out there that are official for it, at least at this moment. So if you're a fan of modern music manhwas centered around idols, something like An Insincere Idol's Blank Slate from my previous videos, then Debut with You might be something to look into. Kidnap Dragons is the first of 2 shorter stories I have for you this week. It's a modern regression manhwa that I've currently read up to chapter 28 on. Yoo Ji-tae is the name of its main character, and he is the most powerful person in the world. Although, even though he is, there's nothing he could do about saving said world. Even having the power to turn back time multiple regressions, 6 times to be exact, he couldn't find an answer to save it. Finally though, wanting a different approach, on his 7th regression, Jite tries to eliminate to the root of that problem. Young dragons who were eliminated by humans caused the whole entire dragonkind to destroy Earth 6 times now. With this knowledge, Jite becomes the guardians of the dragons who came to Earth to go and play, and names them all, according to the seasons weirdly enough, but overpowered guardian of dragon children is definitely a story point. The potential is 8 out of 10. Childcare manhwas are usually reserved for romance manhwas, usually of the fantasy kind. At least that's been the case in my experience. And while yes, this manhwa still has room for that, weirdly enough, it's more on the action side, at least for now. Definitely an interesting mix of a somewhat modern action fantasy genre, to say the least. The art is 7 out of 10. Whilst it is a modern fantasy action manhwa, there's a definite merging of art styles between the various moments. Jite being displayed as constantly tired is an interesting choice, but it truly depicts his true exhaustion of trying to save this world. It's admirable, but definitely almost quite the sad tale. So if you're a fan of newer stories, and a mix of dragon childcare and the modern fantasy action genres seem interesting to you, then Kidnap Dragons could be something for you to look through. The other shorter story I have for you this week is the Sword-Eating Swordmaster, a fantasy manhwa that you can read up to chapter 14 on. The focus of this plot is on Arhan Caravan, the young master of a fallen noble family in the countryside who lives quite a peaceful life on their land. His father, during Arhan's childhood, told him of the legend of their family, to which Arhan was actually quite suspicious of. Forgetting this old legend and brushing it aside, the Caravan family lived their lives until one day, a mysterious swordmaster marches through the territory and completely annihilates everyone. Everyone except Arhan. Vowing for revenge, Arhan starts to do what he can, when the spirit of his ancestor, Liam Caravan, suddenly appears before him and lets him know that he can eat swords to gain powers since he has dwarf blood in him. The potential is 6 out of 10. Peaceful family and only son sees the annihilation of both his family and the inhabitants of their countryside estate is definitely one of the more played up introductions. Whilst it is devastating and honestly a tragedy, it's just a little too common for my taste. The fact that Arhan is somehow of dwarf blood though, like, really? Okay, that's a setup, I get it, but really? The art is 7 out of 10. So far, everything is within the norm for a fantasy story. The dwarf part is interesting, but there are just no visual traits other than the mental portion. Otherwise, the absorption of the abilities gives some variety to the scenes, albeit a little long-winded at times. So if you're a fan of newer stories, wanted something that evokes similar points as Weapon-Eating Bastard from my previous videos, then the Sword-Eating Swordmaster should be bookmarked for later. Welcome to the highlight portion of today's video. Our highlight today is The Life of a Returning Officer, which I've now read out to chapter 146 on. Info card description will have links to my original opinion. Choi Jung-hyuk, as a quick reminder, is a cop that after being eliminated, regressed back in time to 1997. Having this second chance at life, he wants to stay true to his cop vocation and catch all the criminals in the past that he wasn't able to do anything about. Of course, since now going over 100 chapters long, it has gone through quite a lot. At the bare minimum, Jung-hyuk has been finally able to graduate from his police academy and become a proper cop. This isn't his only tool in the shed, as even before he graduated, Jung-hyuk has made a lot of friends and contacts along the way. From high-ranking officials in Korea, KGB members and spies, American stockbrokers and people, there's honestly just quite a bit. All to say, his revenge against the shadow organization that is seemingly running a lot of the criminal organization underworld is still not even closely within his grasp. However, he is slowly but surely uncovering more as he goes on. My previous scores for this manhwa were 8 out of 10 for story and art and 7 out of 10 for characters. The story slightly goes up to an 8.5 out of 10 as the main premise of this manhwa is still there. Jung-hyuk's main goal is to make sure that all criminals, especially those that were able to get away prior to his regression, are actually caught. But the actual big fish of the criminal sea is still very much at large, and while for the most part still evades him, the plot actually doesn't forget about it but rather tosses some breadcrumbs here and there. The characters go down though to 6 out of 10 as due to the almost case-by-case nature of the pace and plot, there really isn't too much character development per se. Instead, we are constantly introduced and reintroduced to a revolving cast of characters that support Jung-hyuk in achieving his overall goals one way or another within legal and reasonable bounds, again to a degree. The art stays at 8 out of 10 as for the most part the overall art style from the beginning hasn't really changed. What it has done though to at least stay somewhat interesting is due to the nature of Jung-hyuk's approach. He is realistic that he needs a lot of power. And that brings it intelligence networks such as the KGB and also the American stock market for economic means. I didn't think it would get to this much from my initial impression, but here we are. The life of a returning officer is definitely a manhwa that lends itself to be more of an episodic but clearly has an overall direction that is aspiring towards something just more at a snailish pace. I would recommend it quite heavily for those that want a longer running series about a cop bringing criminals to justice, even if it's more preventative in some cases than reactive. Would you agree or would you not? Comment down below your thoughts on this manhwa. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Write down in the comment section down below what manhwa you've been reading and I might just take a look. Till next time though, have a good read.